Yeah. And that is on my mind a lot. And it's on the mind of all the other parents I talk to who aren't psychologists. Uh, they are also thinking a lot about this. And
Mhm.
before I get into that, I do want to just throw in there, we've talked about the benefits of technology.
Yeah.
Um, I think for teen girls in particular, the benefits of being able to hear other people's experiences, feel like you're part of a community, find a community online. Um,
Mhm.
the internet's all about sharing special interests. And you can do that anonymously, and you can do that in that way that is celebrated and supported. You can geek out about any subject as particular as you want. There are some big risks that come for all children. I'm thinking about them for my children, but also for uh, neurodivergent teen girls in particular. Because one of the things that they're not very good at is lying or detecting lies, right? Like
Hmm.
communication tends to be pretty straightforward. And that tends to be one of the reason that girls will struggle more with their peer relationships with boys, because at certain ages, um, generalizing, but girls' social communications are more complex, and they'll
Mhm.
do kind of rapidly shifting in group, out group,
Mm.
not invited anymore, shifting alliances, and lying. you know,
Hmm.
um, Often boys don't get into that nearly as much, and so bullying can be hard to recognize for a teen on the spectrum. When they're being made fun of, it can be hard to know. There's sort of a bad feeling, but also
Mm.
the underlying, subtext is missed.
Hmm.
And so bullying online is also a problem, and then, like, spotting predators online, basically, like,
Mm.
people who are lying to you. That's not the default assumption, um, because autistic people don't tend to lie. They don't think other people are lying either.
Hmm.
Um, and so like one of my clients did have a situation where she had early and unlimited exposure to an iPad, and through some app, was, some predator had contacted her. There was a lot of grooming behavior and then sending of inappropriate photos, stuff that the parents clearly did not know was going on. Right. And so my line to parents and what I plan to do myself, it might sound kind of radical, but I want my kids to know that they don't have any privacy online, that any
Mhm.
illusion
Mhm.
of privacy online is just an illusion.
Mhm.
And that is how I'm going to justify that I am going to look through their phone and I am going to look through their apps, um, because it's my job to remind them, not to get fooled by that. It's so easy to think you sent a text to a friend and that text is just going to stay between you. you know.
Right.
Um, but anybody can screenshot that. They can share it with anyone else at any time. And so, just that I hope, if I am periodically monitoring their communication, not in a sneaky way, hey, it's time for me to look at the phone. That phone, by the way, is my phone. It's not their phone. We're not going to
Mhm.
call it their phone, right? It's a phone
Mhm.
that I own that they get to use. Um, and I am going to look through it. Uh, and I'm going to look through all the apps they use. And that way, I'm hoping that they will never send anything that they are not okay with me seeing, that they will
Mhm.
never send anything that they are not okay with their friend's parent seeing. you know,
Mhm.
and that they will just start to understand that that's not a private space. You want to have a private conversation, you get together face to face, or you give them a call, right? Like there are ways you can have a private conversation. This is not one of them. you know? Um, and they may resent that, but I try and explain it to parents. And actually, I've had teenagers be pretty receptive to that.
Yeah.
Um, it is not just that your parent is, looking out for your safety, right? In the
Mhm.
case of this teen girl, she needed her parents to step in and monitor her communication. And that wasn't happening.
Right.
They didn't know, and so it was a really bad situation. But just even with the things kids say about each other, right?
Yeah.
just for them to know that you can't assume that's private. It feels private, but it's not. You could easily
Mhm.
go anywhere. Don't put it down in writing. My girlfriends and I'm still close friends with several of my friends from high school, and we constantly talk about how grateful we are that there was no social media in those days. Just like, saved saved by the absence of that because, kids get together and they say terrible things about each other. Uh, but when they do that in the online space,
Mhm.
there's a permanent record of it and it will get back to that person. And so that's the main thing that I
Mm.
do with my kids in terms of that, like bullying risk and risk for predatory behavior. The other thing I'm doing with my 9-year-old already is I'm talking about addiction broadly. I'm talking about
Mm.
um, things that are so appealing or that feel so good that your brain just wants more of that. Um, and he does get to play video games, so we have a context to talk about that with. But then how if you were to just do that and
Yeah.
never go out and play, how you would lose out. Your life would shrink. And it would shrink to this thing that your brain is like, yes, 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 I want more of that.
Mhm.
But your life overall would shrink and it wouldn't be a good life anymore. So
How
this
do
is
you how do you get how do you get a preteen to understand that?
uh So preteens are perfect
Okay.
because, right? It's perfect to talk about your kid at this age, 9, 10, 11. They can process complex topics and
Yeah.
information um,
Yeah.
and really engage in these discussions. And they're not old enough yet that, like, mom, you don't know anything. Like, mom, you don't get it. He hasn't tuned me out yet. We
Right.
still have a really like, I hope we always have a good relationship, but we still have a really open channel of communication that I know is going to narrow when he gets older,
Mhm.
because he's gonna be far more interested in that point about what his peers think and not very interested
Mhm.
in what I think. And that's normal. That's appropriate. So I wanna get it in there now. I wanna lay a foundation now of how these things can be problems.
Mhm.
So now I'm talking with my 9-year-old about alcohol and about marijuana, and about screens and about phone addiction.
Mhm.
Talk about people we know who are sort of more addicted to their phones, right?
Right.
Um, and less, right? And how what's on those phones can be so appealing to your brain that it feels better than reality.
Mhm.
Um, but then you lose out. And he can see that now because, he loves to get out in the world. Uh, that he would lose out if he were to leave reality and just spend time with a device and just connect with friends that way.